It's late at night. Your house is completely quiet. You're lying in bed, exhausted, and your room is completely dark, except from the light from your phone screen. Your eyes burn every time you close them. Your thoughts feel muddled and unclear, and yet somehow, almost like it has a mind of its own, your thumb keeps scrolling. You know you have to get up early tomorrow. You know you'll be miserable if you don't sleep. But somehow, this moment feels like the only part of the day that belongs to you. That's the moment that I would like to talk about today. I'm a high school junior, and this moment is familiar to almost everyone I know. We say goodnight, we turn off the lights, and then we stay awake. It's not always because we have work left, or because we're too anxious to fall asleep. Often, it's simply because these early morning hours feel like the only time that no one is asking anything from us. There's a name for this: revenge bedtime procrastination. It comes from a Chinese phrase that describes staying up late to reclaim leisure time that you didn't get during the day. So far, I've described revenge bedtime procrastination by describing staying up late or pushing through fatigue. But I don't think that revenge bedtime procrastination is really about not wanting to sleep at all. I think it's about control, freedom. This fear we have that if we don't steal back a little bit of time for ourselves, we'll get lost in to-do lists and spreadsheets and goals. One night in 9th grade, I had just spent hours studying for a math test. I was completely drained. I could hardly walk straight, let alone think straight. I stood there with my hand on the light switch, ready to just collapse into bed, and I felt this wave of release that the day was finally over wash over me. But then I paused for a second and thought, that's it? That's all I get. A few hours of rest, and then I have to wake up, sit in a chair, and do more math problems. So I decided to give myself a reward on Instagram that was supposed to last about 10 minutes. I closed the app, put my phone away, and closed my eyes an hour later. For me, that hour was not about social media. I don't even think it was about losing track of time. That hour was about my inability to let the day end without something that felt like mine. American culture treats being busy constantly as proof that we're not wasting time. We praise all-nighters. We brag about pushing through illness and exhaustion and stress. We joke about burnout like it's a normal part of growing up and not a dangerous spiral that can have long-lasting negative impacts on a person's health. Somewhere along the way, productivity became conflated with worth, and taking care of mental health became an afterthought, like advice your doctor gives you during your annual checkups that you never quite get around to following. So we pack our days with classes and goals and schedules and achievements. We build resumes describing everything we've done before we even know who we are. And when there's no time left for ourselves, we try to create it during our precious hours of sleep. That's the revenge bedtime procrastination trap. It took me a while to realize that not wanting to go to sleep at night wasn't some sort of bad habit that I needed to fix by pushing myself to sleep earlier or by deleting Instagram, something everyone my age has unsuccessfully attempted at some point or another. Not wanting to go to sleep was actually a signal. It was a sign that my days were so full of responsibility and pressure that my brain needed an escape. Once I noticed that, I was forced to ask myself a harder question. Why was I putting so much time and mental energy into being productive? Was I doing all of this because it mattered to me? Or because everyone around me was doing it? Because it felt like we all just had to? We're often told that rest and leisure are important because they help us work better. And that's undeniably true. The National Institutes of Health tell us that without sleep, our brain's ability to learn new information decreases by 40%. Can you think about how every time you haven't slept, your ability to simply learn something new, a skill we use constantly, is diminished by 40%? Rest helps with the formation of new memories, with concentration. All of this is very important to remember. However, if I think back to all the times that I've put off sleeping to read through random Reddit threads, I don't think having these statistics in front of me would have helped me at all. Why is that? Because the idea that we should all sleep to focus or work better is still completely centered around this idea of trying to maximize productivity. But as we've established, this intense fixation around productivity is the very root of the problem that we're trying to solve. That's when I realized I had to find a new way to look at rest and leisure. What if leisure matters even when it doesn't get me better grades or make me more accomplished? If work gives us purpose because we lose ourselves in it, why can't leisure do the same? Why can't reading a book, going out for a walk, listening to music, doing something just because you enjoy doing it, count as meaningful even if it doesn't lead to something else? Why does everything we spend time on have to earn its place? I had been treating leisure like a guilty pleasure instead of a necessary, inescapable part of life. Something to squeeze in if there was time left. Something I had to constantly justify. Something I could never let take up too much space. That was the mindset that had made me get stuck in this trap. So, instead of just pushing myself to sleep more, I decided to try something slightly different. Last semester, every night I stayed up until almost 2 or 3 a.m. I told myself I needed this time to decompress. And of course, the way I chose to decompress was through social media. I'll admit, it was enjoyable in the moment. But when the next day rolled around, I was miserable. I couldn't concentrate, found myself constantly snapping at people. I felt disconnected from my own life, like I was always catching up, but never actually there. So, I decided to run a small experiment. For 1 week, just 1 week, I decided to go to sleep at 10:30 p.m. To do this, I naturally had to let go of a few smaller priorities. Instead of trying to perfect everything I did and get all 20 to-do list items done, I focused on what mattered most, what was most urgent. I made sure to make time for things that I found enjoyable, even if they didn't look impressive or productive to other people. And just like that, something shifted. I woke up before my alarm. I could finally concentrate. Work didn't feel impossible. And I wasn't desperate to reclaim time at night because I wasn't completely losing myself during the day. That's when I understood something that was initially a little bit shocking. Sleep wasn't the enemy of my freedom, but my exhaustion with my life was. When productivity becomes our sole purpose in life, rest feels like failure. Leisure feels irresponsible. And we end up trying to recover from our lives instead of actually being able to live them. But when we give leisure a real place, not as a reward or even as a break, but something that matters on its own, We stop burning ourselves out just to feel accomplished. This is not about doing less because your goals don't matter at all, or because being successful isn't meaningful. This is about doing less of what you don't really care about so that you can fully experience all the things that do. And that has to include leisure and rest. So here's my invitation to all parents, doctors, lawyers, business professionals, but especially to my fellow students. Pay attention when you feel the urge to steal back time at night. That urge is trying to tell you something. Ask yourself if you're stuck in the productivity trap. Ask yourself who you're really trying to impress. Ask yourself what you've been putting off lately that actually makes you feel like yourself. Let go of the smaller goals. Schedule leisure on purpose. You have to remember that your life cannot be complete without curiosity and joy and rest. They're how you come back to yourself. This was the shift in mindset that was the beginning of my journey overcoming revenge bedtime procrastination. Of course, it's not always easy. Occasionally, I'll have a draining day. It'll be late at night. My house will be completely quiet. And I'll feel the urge to take out my phone and scroll for a few hours. But with every passing day, I'm getting better at instead asking myself, what really went wrong today that's making me feel this way? And what can I do better tomorrow? So, to everyone who finds yourself in this situation, all that I suggest is that you take a few seconds to ask yourself these 2 questions. You might find that they'll solve problems you didn't even know that you had. Thank you.